Nicole packed her suitcase while her husband lay on the couch, relaxing after work. "It's a pity that you and I couldn't go together this time, but maybe we'll be able to do it later," she said. The woman was going on vacation with her longtime friend Alice. "This year, my husband couldn't take a vacation in the same numbers as me." She already wanted to go on vacation, so without thinking long, she called her buddy along. Fred's work had been a mess the last few months. Many of the specialists had quit, and the workload was divided among those who remained. New hires weren't coming in fast enough, so they had to make do. Vacation was out of the question now. Nicole was not too upset. She was not the kind of person whose mood changed because of circumstances. Immediately, she looked for a solution to the problems that arose and talked her friend into it. They quickly chose a hotel and took the tickets. The 14 days flew by very quickly. Every day, Fred corresponded with his wife and was in touch, so the separation was practically not felt. In addition, the heavy workload was taking its toll. When Nicole arrived home, she and her husband went to a restaurant, deciding to celebrate the reunion. Fred noticed that his wife looked tanned, very rested, and relaxed. The vacation had definitely done her some good. A week later, life was back to normal. His wife went back to work, so they only saw each other in the mornings and evenings. One day, Fred got off work before his wife. He was already standing at the door of the apartment and took out his keys when suddenly he heard someone's voice. Behind him, turning around in surprise, he saw a young man with a huge bouquet of flowers. "Hello, this is apartment 50. This bouquet is for Nicole. Please take it," he said. Not understanding anything, Fred took the bouquet of white lilies and walked into the apartment. While he was looking through the flowers to find some note, Nicole herself came home. "There's a delivery guy here. Got a bouquet for you," the husband said, looking at his wife's reaction. For a second, he thought it looked like Nicole realized who it was from, but then she began to stare at the sudden surprise with the same amazement as her husband. "This is some kind of mistake. It's not my birthday," she said. "But the courier gave both your name and apartment number," asserted the husband. "Fred, but I really don't know. Do you want to throw them away? If they're bothering you, but I really don't even have a theory. Who it could be?" The husband really didn't like this situation. He decided he needed to keep a close eye on his wife, and just a couple days later, he noticed something else strange. Nicole began to spend more time on the phone and constantly correspond with someone. When asked by her husband, she answered that it is written by girlfriends, but her phone, for some reason, always began to carry, although previously freely left it somewhere on the table. One day, Fred decided to check if Nicole was really talking to her friends all the time. Taking his wife's phone, he found out that she hadn't texted with her friends for a couple of days. Then who was she talking to all the time? That's where the man got lucky. The answer came to him one evening. Nicole was cooking dinner in the kitchen, and Fred was sitting at the computer and reading something. Suddenly, someone rang the doorbell. They were not expecting guests, so Fred went to open the door with a perplexed expression. On the threshold stood an unfamiliar man in a neat suit and with a bouquet in his hands. Fred noticed that they were white lilies, the same flowers that the courier had recently brought to their apartment by mistake. The stranger smiled amiably and began to say something quickly in Spanish. Fred only realized that the man was asking for Nicole, and for some reason he was calling him brother. "And who are you?" Fred asked, having somehow remembered the words in a language he had studied long ago. "I'm her lover," the stranger said, and showed a picture on his phone of him and Nicole at the sea. She was standing there, adjusting her hat, and her wedding ring was missing from her ring finger. Yes, the wife had a very nice vacation there, the husband thought. He called her from the kitchen and asked her to come over. It was even curious to see how she would get out of this situation. Nicole came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands with a towel and muttering something to herself. She looked at the foreigner with the flowers, then slowly shifted her gaze to her husband. "Your man is here. He missed you, he says," the husband said. It was obvious that the foreigner was very happy to see her, but the woman herself turned very pale. When the man moved toward her, she stepped back. "Fred, who is that?" "I don't know him," she said cautiously. The foreigner began to say something quickly in Spanish again, then shifted his gaze to the woman's hands and saw a ring that hadn't been there before. He looked at Fred's hands, put 2 plus 2 together, and was no longer so friendly. He got really angry, started yelling at Nicole, and threw the flowers on the floor. The woman even started to calm the foreigner, but it was not very successful. When the man's shouting subsided, and he, continuing to scandalize, finally left the apartment, Fred looked at his wife. She still looked very pale and confused, but she was no longer trying to call the whole situation a misunderstanding. Everything was very clear. She was having an affair at the resort. She didn't tell her lover that she was actually married. He, inspired by her beauty or something else, had come here and wanted to surprise her. He'd sent her flowers before, written to her, "Fred, please forgive me. It all just sort of happened by itself. We had a drink. He asked me to dance," she began. "Now I understand why you asked me not to call you, but to write to you. Alice answered my messages." Her husband asked sarcastically. The woman fell silent, apparently realizing that this tactic wasn't going to work either. "Just leave. Pack your things and go," Fred said coldly. The woman hadn't expected such a harsh tone. "Actually, it's my apartment too," she said. "Pack up. You have 10 minutes," her husband replied, tapping his finger on the watch on his wrist. Nicole could see that her usually always calm husband was starting to lose his temper a little at a time, so she decided to get away with it, hastily packed her things, and left the apartment. From a neighbor, Fred learned that his wife at that moment jumped out of the house and began to ask people in the yard, where went a man in a suit who recently came out of the same entrance. Apparently, she decided to try her luck with that foreigner. But something told him that she was unlikely to succeed. Despite all this unpleasant situation, the man was glad that he managed to find out the true face of his chosen one now, and not later on, after another 10 years of joint life. And it was unclear how many more such foreigners there could be during these years. End of story. Write your opinion in the comments. Thanks for watching.